I start by screwing down my template. Now, if you want to see how this template is made, I've got a whole other video on that. And you'll see this template's in 2 parts, which I find really useful. You'll see as we go along. Once it's screwed down, I like to remove the outer wood very roughly, a bit at a time. And to do that, I just basically cut sections off. It doesn't have to be neat, but I try and get as close as I can to the actual edge of the template itself. Then I can go in closer with my bandsaw to trim away as much as I can. Basically, I want to get as much off as I can before I use the router. Here, I'm doing it for you at actual speed, so you can see I'm really taking my time. A lot of this video will be sped up. Now, I recently upgraded to this Radian 1/2" shank 4-flute trimmer, and I've got to say, it's made a world of difference. Using a better router bit makes the job much easier. And what you can see with the 1/2" bit is it's actually the size of the body of the guitar, so I can trim it all in one go. Note here that I've got my bearing lined up to make sure it touches both of the bottom templates, because as you can see as I go around, there's going to be a gap for part of the template when the template's at the bottom, and that could be a gap with either template. So I really want to make sure that I'm not going to in any way slip and cut into the body where I don't want to. And the great thing about this bit is it has a double bearing, one at the top as well, and you'll see a bit later on how I use it like that. So I'm starting here to route around. I absolutely love using templates like this and the way it kind of reveals the shape as you go along. Now obviously I've rough cut, so I've roughly got the shape, but as it smooths off and becomes nice and rounded, I just think it's amazing. I always find routing bodies is one of the more magical moments of the guitar build, where it really feels like it's becoming an instrument. I'm doing this at the moment at real-time speed, so you can see how I'm going slowly. And just to let you know, I've actually got another video that I'm in the process of making, in which I explain how to use a router properly to make sure you're going with the grain and not against the grain. I just skipped a little bit there, and there's a reason for that, which you'll see in this other video. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see that when it comes out. And if you're watching this in the future, check out my router playlist, link to which is in the description of this video, because that's going to have links to all of my videos in which I'm explaining how routers work. There's also a link to the series in which I make this guitar body, from the first stage of making the template in my previous video through this stage to the next stage of carving certain elements. Again, you can see here I've sort of skipped a bit, and that's because I don't want to catch it at the wrong angle. And what I'm going to do is flip the template over soon and work at it in the other direction. I should also say, before you mention in the comments how much sawdust there is here, it's partly because I wanted to show that even with the shape closely cut with the bandsaw, there's still a load of sawdust that comes off. And check this out. Here is where the router bit catches. Even though I know what I'm doing, and I was being super careful, a large router bit like this has to be respected. Again, check out my safety video on some tips to help avoid that. And in fact, I've upgraded this router table since upgrading to this 1/2" bit to make it even safer. Here you can see I've flipped the guitar over so the template's now at the top, and I'm moving the bearing so that it overlaps both of the template sections again. And now I'm going round it. I don't have to worry about skipping any bits, because there's bits that I'm going to come at in the right angle now for the wood grain, and the rest has already been shaped by the router when the template was on the other side. This has been at normal speed, but let's just speed it up. And so now it's time to remove the template. Now, what I didn't say earlier, but I would have said in my video about the templates, is the holes from where I've screwed the body in, well, I don't have to worry about those too much. That's where, as you can see here, where the cavities are for the pickups and the controls, etc. And I'm using the process, which I hope you've seen before, where you put masking tape on identical bits on both sides of the template and the body, and you super glue it together. That holds it really tight, and it means when I later come to removing the template, there's no marks on the body at all. Now I'm copying my annotations that I made earlier when I made the template, just to know how deep to make my router cuts. And for that, I recommend starting with a Forstner bit before going on with the router. Lining my router bit up so the bearing matches the template, and now with my body clamped down, also clamping down the template, by the way, for double protection, I can work around. And the key thing of using a router is not to go too deep in one pass, so I'll be doing it in sections. As you can see here, I'm working on the neck pocket, and this is my final pass. As you get deeper with the router, you've got to be careful going around the corner here that the bearing isn't lower than the template, because obviously the neck pocket is going to end up being deeper. Now, one great thing I've got is this little ruler guide that I can use to make sure the depth of my router bit is exactly as I want it. So here it's sticking down 3.1 centimeters, 31 millimeters. Here I am ripping off the template, and it's just the masking tape that really is stuck together, so there's no glue left on the body or the template. Such a great technique. Now, if you haven't watched that video on how to make the template, this is a cool little trick. It was part of my template making video as well, but it's where I'll make a little block that fits into the body, into the cavity, which I can cut and screw down, and then use this block as a guide to make this part, the control cavity, deeper than the pickup cavity. Just working it with the router. It's a little tip that I really like. And you can see I'm going to be doing the cavity in passes to make sure I get to the right depth before unscrewing the block. And you've got to be careful here, because if you remember, from one side of this cavity there's a little lip. Just before I remove my template, I'm going to mark in where my belly curve is going to go. I'm not actually going to show you how to do that in this video, because there's a few different methods to do it. So I'm going to make a whole other video about that. This video is really focusing on the elements where I'm using a router in some way. Again, setting up my depth gauge, locking it in place so it doesn't slip, and transferring it over to make sure my router bit is in the right place. And I really need to upgrade these router bits. I've had them a long time and they were budget ones, they do last, but it is noticeable how much better it is when you upgrade to a better router bit. Things finish smoother, there's less chance of chip out, and it just feels more pleasant to work with. Now, as I'm coming in from the bottom of this trem carve, I'm going to make sure that I can measure my depth guide, so it's the depth of the body, and then I'm going to subtract a few millimeters off it, because I want a little lip 2 millimeters big for my bridge route cavity. So going around it like this allows me to do that. Now, the final thing I'm going to work on today is doing my roundovers on the edges. I'm doing that with a roundover bit, but actually, as it goes around the body, the size of the curve changes. So that final sort of smoothing the curves out, elongating them at certain points, changing them, is going to be done by hand carving. But I like to start off with the roundover bit just to make it all even at the smallest size that it's going to be. And here we've got the body. Now, actually what I'm going to do in my next video is add those hand carves in to make this more like to make it more like my version of a Strat. So a bit different from the original measurements I made for the original template video. So please like and subscribe to see that video when it comes out. I've got a link in my video to Radian for that bit that I used at the beginning that I thought was great. And there's links to the playlist on all the stages of making this body and my tips, which are coming soon for how to use a router. Till next time, happy strumming.